Red and blue lights strobed against the Mustang's polished hood, turning the midnight blue into a pulsating beacon. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as officers stepped out of their cars, hands hovering near their holsters. "Driver, step out of the vehicle, hands where I can see them," one barked through a megaphone. For a split second, my instincts screamed at me to run. Hit the gas, leave the flashing lights in the dust. But running from the police wasn't the same as outrunning that SUV. This was different. These men weren't trying to kill me. They just thought I was the criminal. The SUV had played me perfectly. Slowly, I opened the door, the cool night air rushing over me. My knees trembled as I raised my hands. "I'm not who you think I am," I shouted, my voice breaking against the wail of sirens. I was being chased. "On your knees." The officer's order cut me down. Asphalt pressed cold against my skin as they shoved me forward, cuffing my wrists behind my back. The metal bit into my skin, grounding me in the cruel reality. I was no longer just a woman running from shadows. I was a suspect. They searched the Mustang. My heart hammered as one officer leaned inside, his flashlight sweeping over the dashboard. When his beam landed on the open panel with Grandpa's card inside, my breath caught. "Please don't take it." But the officer only frowned, muttered something to his partner, and slammed the panel shut. They weren't looking for scraps of paper. They were looking for weapons, drugs, anything they could charge me with. The Mustang was clean. So was I. But they didn't let me go. Instead, they pulled me to my feet and shoved me toward the back of a patrol car. "You're coming with us," one of them said. His face was unreadable under the pulsing lights. "We'll figure out what's going on downtown." Downtown. The word rattled in my skull like a threat. I was shoved inside the cruiser, my reflection fractured in the glass. My mind raced faster than the car when it pulled away. The folder in my bag. The coin in my pocket. The coordinates hidden in the Mustang. If they searched me deeper, if they looked closer, everything Grandpa had trusted me with could be lost. I couldn't let that happen. As we drove, I leaned back against the seat, forcing my breath to steady. I thought of Grandpa, his calm voice, his unshakable belief in me. He hadn't left all this behind for me to collapse at the first sign of trouble. He'd prepared me. When the cruiser slowed for a red light, I spotted something in the shadows outside, the SUV. Parked far enough away to avoid suspicion, but close enough to watch. My blood turned to ice. Whoever they were, they wanted me arrested. They wanted me silenced. The light turned green. The cruiser pulled forward, leaving the SUV behind. But I knew they weren't gone. They were waiting for the right moment to make their move. And I realized something else. I couldn't let the police protect me. Because this wasn't about protection, it was about exposure. If Grandpa's enemies had infiltrated my family, what was to stop them from infiltrating the police too? I pressed my cuffed hands against the seat, my mind snapping into survival mode. I needed out before downtown. I needed to get back to the Mustang. To the coordinates. To the answers waiting for me. The question was how. The cruiser's cage felt smaller with every passing block, the metal divider in front of me reflecting my pale, tight face. My cuffed wrists ached. But it wasn't the pain that made my chest tighten, it was the gnawing certainty that I wasn't being taken to safety. The SUV had vanished from sight, but that didn't comfort me. It had vanished once before, only to reappear at just the right moment. Whoever was inside, they weren't giving up. We rolled through downtown streets, the city glowing with neon and street lamps. The officer in the passenger seat flipped through papers on his clipboard, while the driver radioed something I couldn't quite hear. Their voices were casual, almost bored. To them, I was just another body to process. But I knew better. Grandpa's words whispered in my memory. Asterisk, never assume the system will save you. Sometimes the system is the enemy. The thought made my stomach twist. What if the SUV wasn't just watching me? What if it was coordinating with them? The car slowed, pulling into the police station's underground garage. My pulse spiked. Concrete walls rose around us, gray and unforgiving, swallowing us into a cavern lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. As the cruiser rolled to a stop, a second car pulled in behind us. Not a patrol unit. Black. Sleek. The SUV. My heart stopped. The two officers exchanged a quick look in the front seat. It was subtle, but I caught it. One of them muttered something under his breath, and the other nodded. That's when the air left my lungs. They knew. The back door opened, and a heavy hand yanked me out. I stumbled onto the concrete, the fluorescent light turning the world harsh and unforgiving. "Where are you taking me?" I demanded, my voice shaking but loud. The officer didn't answer. He just gripped my arm tighter, steering me toward a door at the far end of the garage. Not the main entrance. Not the booking desk I'd expected. The SUV's doors opened. Two men in dark suits stepped out, their faces shadowed but unmistakably watchful. One adjusted his cufflink, as casual as if he were heading into a business meeting. The other's eyes locked on me like a hawk's. I thrashed against the officer's grip. "You can't just hand me over to them." But his silence told me everything. They weren't arresting me. They were delivering me. Panic surged through me, sharp and blinding. I thought of the notebook in my bag, the flash drive tucked in my pocket, the Mustang waiting with its hidden coordinates. Everything Grandpa had prepared me for was slipping through my fingers. No, I wouldn't let it end here. The officer pushed me toward the door, but instinct kicked in. I twisted hard, slamming my shoulder into his chest. He stumbled, surprised, and I used the moment to run, hands still cuffed, legs pumping across the concrete. "Stop her," someone shouted. Boots pounded behind me. The echo of pursuit filled the garage. I dove behind a parked car, my breath ragged, my mind racing. My wrists screamed as I forced the cuffs downward, pressing them hard against the edge of a bumper. The metal bit into my skin, but I kept sawing, grinding, praying for weakness in the lock. Shouts grew closer. The SUV men were splitting up, flanking the cars. And then snap. The cuff gave way, the jagged edge biting into my wrist as it broke free. I yanked my hands apart just as a shadow swept across the hood above me. I rolled out, sprang to my feet, and ran. Every step felt like it echoed across the entire garage. But ahead, near the ramp leading back to the street, I saw it, an unattended patrol bike. Keys still in. My only shot. I threw myself onto it, twisting the ignition with shaking fingers. The engine roared to life just as a hand clawed at the back of my dress. I kicked hard, sending the bike lurching forward. The man stumbled back, cursing as I shot up the ramp, the garage exploding in chaos behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The city lights greeted me as I sped into the night, heart pounding, eyes stinging. I wasn't free, not yet. But I'd slipped their grip. And now I had a new problem. If the police were compromised, who could I possibly trust? The night wind whipped against my face as the patrol bike screamed down empty streets. Every block blurred past, neon signs and traffic lights streaking like paint on a dark canvas. My pulse was still racing, my wrists raw from the broken cuffs. I didn't slow down until the city lights thinned and the buildings gave way to quieter streets. I finally pulled into an alley behind a shuttered laundromat, the bike's engine rattling to a stop. For a long moment, I just sat there, chest heaving, listening to the echo of silence. I'd escaped, but it didn't feel like freedom. The officers, the suits from the SUV, the station itself, it all added up to the truth I hadn't wanted to admit. Grandpa had warned me, trust is the currency they'll steal from you first. I was out here with no allies, no safe house, and half the city likely alerted to fugitive Tasha. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it in the weak glow of a street lamp. That little piece of metal felt heavier than my whole body. Grandpa had risked everything to hide it, and I'd almost lost it in the back of that cruiser. Whatever was on here, it wasn't just family secrets. It was enough to terrify powerful people into hunting me down. My stomach knotted. I couldn't just keep running forever. I needed answers. The Mustang. Grandpa's car was more than just sentimental. It was deliberate, his way of pointing me towards something greater. And those hidden compartments weren't just for show. He'd left me a map, scratched under the trunk lining, the one I'd barely had time to copy into my notebook before the police had stormed my life. I opened the notebook now, flipping to the jagged lines and numbers. Coordinates. They pulled me outside the city, somewhere off the highway near the industrial district. but going there blind was suicide. If they were following me, they'd expect me to head toward Grandpa's trail. I needed a disguise. My eyes drifted to the laundromat door. Old, locked, but a small pane of glass was cracked near the top. A few desperate minutes later, I was inside, the stale air heavy with detergent and dust. I rummaged through bins of abandoned clothes until I found what I needed: a baggy hoodie, worn jeans, and a baseball cap. I caught my reflection in the grimy mirror above a broken sink. Gone was the bright dress that had made me glow like a target in the night. Now I looked like any tired, anonymous woman just trying to blend in. The bike was too risky. It screamed cop. I left it behind the laundromat, tucking the flash drive and notebook deep into the hoodie's pocket, then slipped back into the night on foot. Every face I passed felt like it lingered on me too long. Every shadow looked like it might peel away into something human. My nerves were shredded, but I forced myself forward, block by block, until I reached the bus station. Inside, the air was thick with diesel and exhaustion. Travelers slumped in plastic seats, clutching bags, waiting for red-eye routes to anywhere but here. Perfect. I bought a ticket to the next town over with cash from Grandpa's envelope, then sank into a seat by the window, keeping my hood low. The bus hissed to life, pulling away from the terminal, carrying me into the dark. As the city shrank in the distance, I finally allowed myself to exhale. For the first time in hours, I wasn't being chased. Not yet, anyway. But as I traced the coordinates on the map with my finger, a realization chilled me. This wasn't just about exposing my husband or my sister. It wasn't just about clearing my name. Grandpa had built me into a weapon against something much bigger. Something that had its claws in the very institutions I thought I could lean on. And now it was my turn to choose. Hide and vanish forever? Or step into the fire and burn down everything they'd built? The bus rumbled on, carrying me toward the answer. The bus hummed along the dark highway, its headlights carving out just enough of the road to keep us moving forward. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, watching the city shrink into nothing more than a glow on the horizon. For the first time in days, the constant pounding in my chest slowed just a little. But peace never lasted long for me anymore. I shifted in my seat and glanced around. The bus was maybe a third full, scattered passengers staring at their phones, a mother rocking a toddler, a man in a suit snoring softly with his head against the window. Normal people. Tired people. People who didn't know their lives were safer because they weren't entangled in whatever web my family had spun. But then my eyes caught on him. Back row, last seat on the left. Baseball cap pulled low, shoulders squared like a soldier pretending to slouch. At first glance, he blended in. But my gut twisted. His posture was too controlled. His gaze, though he tried to mask it, kept flicking up toward the reflection in the bus window. Toward me. My pulse spiked again. Had they already tracked me here? I pulled my hood lower and looked down at the notebook in my lap, pretending to study the jagged lines of Grandpa's coordinates. My mind scrambled. If he was one of them, why wasn't he moving? Was he waiting for me to panic? Waiting for the right stop to follow me off? The driver announced over the crackling speaker, "Next stop, Old Mill Road." 5 minutes. That was close to where I needed to be. Too close. If he got off when I did, it would confirm everything. I needed a plan. I slipped the flash drive deeper into my shoe, just in case. Then I stuffed the notebook back into the hoodie pocket and shifted in my seat like I was restless, careful not to look back at him directly. The bus slowed, the brakes hissing as we pulled into the dimly lit Old Mill station. Only a handful of us stood. My heart leapt into my throat as I rose, clutching the pole for balance. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him stand too. That was it. My fear snapped into determination. If he wanted to follow me, I'd make sure he had a chase to remember. I was the first one down the steps, my sneakers hitting the cracked pavement of the deserted stop. The air smelled of oil and damp concrete. A single flickering streetlight buzzed overhead. I didn't wait. I started walking fast, turning left toward the road that led into the industrial sprawl near the coordinates. The sound of footsteps behind me matched my pace. I risked a glance back. The man was 20 yards away, his cap still low, his stride steady but purposeful. He wasn't hiding it anymore. I bolted. My feet pounded the pavement as I cut across a vacant lot, weeds slashing at my ankles. He shouted something, too muffled to make out, but his footsteps quickened. I ducked between two warehouses, the alley choked with shadows. My lungs burned, but adrenaline pushed me harder. At the end of the alley, I spotted a rusted side door hanging half open. Without thinking, I slipped inside. Darkness swallowed me. The smell of old metal and dust filled my nose. I pressed myself against the wall, forcing my breath quiet as his footsteps echoed closer. The door creaked. He stepped inside. For one agonizing moment, the beam of his flashlight swept across the space, inches from where I stood. My fingers tightened on the edge of a metal pipe lying against the wall. If he turned my way, I'd swing first and ask questions later. But then he muttered something into a small earpiece. His words chilled me to the bone. Asterisk, she's on foot. Close to the target coordinates. Advise. Asterisk. Target coordinates. He knew. I froze, my mind racing. He wasn't just following me. He knew exactly where I was headed, which meant the trap had already been set. The warehouse was a cavern of shadows, broken only by thin strips of moonlight slanting through cracked skylights. Dust floated like ash in the beam of his flashlight, cutting the darkness in jittery arcs. I pressed my back against the cold metal wall, my fingers curled tight around the pipe like it was the only weapon I'd ever own. His boots scraped against the concrete floor, slow, deliberate, like he knew I was there but was in no hurry to pounce. Copy that, he whispered into his earpiece. She's cornered. My breath froze in my throat. Cornered? No, not yet. I gripped the pipe tighter, every muscle wound so tight I thought I might snap. He turned his back just slightly, sweeping his light toward a row of rusted shelves on the far side of the warehouse. That was my chance. I moved. Every nerve screamed as I swung the pipe down with everything I had. The hollow clang as it connected with his arm was deafening. He stumbled, his flashlight clattering across the floor and spinning beams of wild light against the walls. He shouted, dropping to one knee, but his hand flew toward his jacket. Gun. Instinct took over. I kicked out hard, slamming the pipe against his hand before he could draw. The gun skittered across the floor into the darkness. He cursed, clutching his wrist. Who are you? I hissed, the words tearing out of me. Who sent you? For the first time, I saw his face clearly. Late 30s maybe, rough jawline, eyes cold but steady. He didn't look like some thug pulled off the street. He looked trained. Military trained. You don't want to know, he spat. I raised the pipe again, my whole body shaking with fury and fear. Try me. His lips twisted into something between a grimace and a smirk. You think your grandfather kept his secrets from everyone? You were never supposed to make it this far. The moment you touched that notebook, you painted a target on your back. The words hit me harder than any blow. He knew about the notebook. Why? I demanded. What do they want with me? He shook his head, breathing ragged now. You're just a piece. A piece of the board your grandfather built. They'll clear you off it soon enough. My stomach nodded. Pieces on a board. A game. Grandpa hadn't just left me a car and a notebook, he'd left me in the middle of something so much bigger. Before I could press him further, a sharp crack split the air. The wall near his head splintered. A gunshot. From outside. My heart lurched. Someone else was here. He cursed again, diving for cover behind a stack of crates. I didn't wait. I bolted for the flashlight, snatched it up, and sprinted toward the opposite side of the warehouse. Another gunshot echoed, closer this time, ricocheting off metal. I ducked low, the flashlight bouncing in my grip, my mind racing in chaos. Was the shot meant for him, or for me? Through the gaps in the warehouse siding, I caught a glimpse of headlights sweeping across the lot. Another black SUV. Panic clawed at me. If I stayed, I'd be caught in the crossfire. If I ran, I had no idea what, or who, was waiting outside. I turned the flashlight off, plunging myself into near-total darkness. My breathing thundered in my ears as I crouched behind a rusted workbench. The man's radio crackled faintly from across the warehouse. Agent down. Asset is in play. Moving to extraction. Asset. That word wrapped around me like barbed wire. They weren't just hunting me. They had plans for me. I bit my lip hard, forcing down the rising terror. Grandpa had trained me for nothing, but he had trusted me for everything. I couldn't stop here. The side door rattled violently. More footsteps. More voices. I had seconds, maybe less, to decide. Slip deeper into the warehouse and risk being cornered, or make a run for the back exit and face whatever waited in the night. Either way, the game had already changed.